This scenario has high cost impacts to customers with an annual spend of $397 million, exceeding the annual 2.5% rate cap by a mere 67 times. The Jared Polis plan to force you to electrify the heat in your home is going to cost you and me and Jake and everyone else a small fortune.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of PowerGab, your go-to show for all things energy and environmental policy in the state of Colorado. I'm Jake Fogleman, joined as always by my co-host Amy Cooke. And this week's episode, we want to bring you kind of a little bit of breaking news because I haven't seen this topic covered much anywhere else. But Colorado regulators and the Polis administration are back to expand a topic we've talked about in previous episodes. That is the so-called Clean Heat Plan that the state's gas utilities are required to file with the Public Utilities Commission to meet certain emission benchmarks by, somewhat arbitrary year deadlines, quite frankly. I think we did a show last year when Xcel's first Clean Heat Plan was approved. They're under statutory directive to reduce their emissions on the gas system by 22% by 2030. And now, this Colorado Energy Office and the Department of Public Health and Environment are back at the PUC saying we need to reopen another proceeding because 5 years from then, 2035, we'd like to see them reduce their emissions by 41%.
This is nuts.
Yeah.
I mean, I got no other way. This is just financially insane for ratepayers. And let me put it this way: get a loan for your what this is going to cost you because you're probably going to need it. I don't know. Everybody's going to have to take out a loan to pay for this. So here's what this was: a bill that was passed in 2021. It was Chris Hansen, Tracy Burnett, who she was forced out because she lied on her where she lived. I think it was she's a Boulder, a Boulder state rep, and then Alex Valdez, who was also on the nuclear bill. So maybe he has better ideas now than he did then. But this was a bill passed in 2021. It's the part of the quote beneficial electrification. It's destructive electrification. This is to force you to electrify your home heating. So I have a natural gas furnace in my house. Actually, don't take this wrong way. I actually have two because just of the way the house was built, another section was added on. So essentially I'd have to replace two of them. But here's what they're finding. They can't meet, when I say they, I mean Xcel, Black Hills, Atmos. By the way, I'm served by Atmos. Up in Weld County. Xcel provides our electric power, and then Atmos provides our natural gas. So, for what the PUC or what the legislature told them is, the only way you're going to cut those emissions is you have to electrify. You have to get rid of your natural gas furnace, and you're going to have to get an electric heat pump of some kind. Well, and now they're saying they're going to increase the targets almost double by 2035. Now, here's the kicker on all of this. There's supposed to be, in the original bill, there's a 2.5% rate cap. None of these utilities can actually meet the 22% target by 2030 at the 2.5% rate cap. They can't meet it. In other words, it's going to cost way more for the quote beneficial electrification than what the what the law allows. So you thought you were safe, right? You thought, well, there's a 2.5% rate cap, we're safe. No, except Jay couldn't tell you what is it that the PUC gets to do?
Yeah, these 2.5% rate caps have found their way in a lot of climate bills lately, and they are just not worth the paper that they're printed on, because all of them contain provisions that, you think you're safe. You say, oh, it's capped at 2.5%. That's not so unreasonable. That's about inflation. We can deal with that. But they all come with a follow-up provision that says, unless the commissioners decide that exceeding that rate cap is in the public's interest or it's better for environmental goals, there's usually some criteria along those lines. And guess what the PUC has allowed to happen every time one of these rate caps has been included in these bills? The first round of clean heat plans that were filed, like you mentioned, all of the gas utilities had to exceed that rate cap, and the PUC was just fine and dandy with that because fundamentally they care about emissions, not cost for ratepayers. The Fenberg rider we've talked so much about, which was distribution spending, that also had a rate cap, and the PUC allowed them to blow through that rate cap because quite frankly, it was super unrealistic because of the amount of distribution you need to accommodate all this stuff. But point being that these rate caps don't mean a dang thing, and
I think you said it right. You were starting to say a different word, but no, totally agree. So let's talk some numbers.
Yeah.
So here's the other thing. We do this so you don't have to pull filings, right? So we have the filing for Xcel and for Black Hills. So this is what Xcel Energy, remember, beneficial electrification. I hate that term. I think there should be some kind of mocking voice that goes with it. So there we have what Xcel filed, and remember, they can't meet the 2.5% pay that cap. Here's what they say in their filings for you to get your electric heat pump. Through that work, we found, so they did modeling, right? Through that work, we found that the cost of portfolios creating a pathway to the 2030 emissions target, 22% 2030 emissions target, could be over $1 billion over a 5-year period of time, could cost households $20,000 over the next 5 years. So $20,000 if you're an Xcel Energy customer. It's roughly, and then it's significantly higher than the cost target that Senate Bill 21-264 puts into place. Their cost target, who does the modeling for these people for the legislature, puts into place of approximately $34 million annually, or a total of $170 million over the 5-year plan. We're almost 10 times over that amount. I'm going to ask you, who does the modeling for the state legislature where they come up with this random 2.5% rate cap? And I'm going to go back to the utilities. Why the heck didn't you say at that time, I'm not quite sure we're going to get that? They actually probably did, which is why they can blow through the rate cap if the PUC says it's just and reasonable. So that's Xcel. Let me get to Black Hills. Remember, these guys are just doing what the legislature is telling them to do. This is what Black Hills says in their filing. Their emissions target achievement scenario portfolio, which achieves the 22% reduction by 2030, relying on high levels of demand-side management adoption. Always risky because you're relying on customer behavior and likely unavailable quantities of clean heat qualifying RNG. Anyway, this scenario has high cost impacts to customers with an annual spend of $397 million, exceeding the annual 2.5% rate cap by a mere 67 times.
Is that a lot?
Yeah, 67 times more expensive. They only have 190, I checked, 194,000 natural gas customers. Mm-hmm. So you're looking at probably $10,000 a person in what is arguably one of the poor, I don't know, least wealthy parts of the state.
Yeah.
The point is, the quote beneficial electrification, the Jared Polis plan to force you to electrify the heat in your home is going to cost you and me and Jake and everyone else a small fortune. Here's the other thing, Jake. The state already they're already in a budget shortfall. How are they going to do it with all their buildings?
Well, the thing is, they get around that by forcing the utility to be instead of the state subsidizing this stuff, because the state's heat pump tax credit is halving because, like you said, they're running out of money.
That's right.
They spent like drunken sailors and they can't afford to divvy those out anymore. So instead, they go to the utilities and say, you have to offer rebates, which utility rebate is just a clever way of saying ratepayers subsidizing from being captive ratepayers, forcing as part of your monthly bills, funding those rebates to force you off of something that you may or may not want to be forced off of. So it's all a big scheme that basically is going to involve ratepayers having to pay more for something that should, quite frankly, be the same cost, but for politicians meddling in the service.
So I want to ask this question because we talked about this on another show. We talked about the EPA takings. And that was under the Colorado State Implementation Plan, the SIP, where it's forcing the closure of all of the rest of Colorado's coal-fired power plants. Forget reliability. It doesn't matter. Who cares? Just throw it all to the wind. Colorado Springs Utility didn't want Ray Nixon to close. They don't want that power plant to close. And the EPA essentially threw them a lifeline and said, we think that could be a takings because you are forcing the closure of a facility that doesn't want to close. The people who own it don't want to close it, and you're not offering any compensation. So they think it might be a takings. Could this be a takings if, for instance, Atmos is a natural gas only utility, doesn't even have any it has no electric power customers. It only has natural gas customers. So, for instance, I'm a natural gas customer. I don't want to do this. And should Atmos be forced to electrify customers against its wishes and against its customers' wishes?
Well, think about
without compensation.
It's a perfect example because think about what that means in practice. You think of a company like Xcel, which has roughly equal gas and electric customers. It's not exactly the same, but and fairly similar overlapping service territories for the two services. Sure, Xcel might put up a fight and worry about all of its investments in the gas system, but they can be made whole by forcing those same folks back onto its electric system, and they can recover rates, and serve those customers again on the electric side. A company like Atmos, what you're asking them to do is not only spend money to force their own customers to stop using the product they use, but you're forcing Atmos to incentivize those customers to go to one of your competitors, essentially.
Yes.
Because they have to be served with electric service. Atmos is not an electric service provider. So you're forcing Atmos ratepayers to subsidize those same other ratepayers to jump ship and get electric service from Xcel or Black Hills, and basically funding their transition to your competitor. It's a very strange paradigm, and I think there's some interesting legal hiccups there.
Right. And especially against, I would assume, the utilities' wishes and the customers' wishes.
Right.
This is a state mandate. Oh, and then that sort of reminds me of also the fact that Colorado loves to say, and this was Michael Ogilvie from Air Quality Programs. Remember him saying, he was quoted in one of those stories, I think it was a Colorado public radio stories about, oh, this is economics. This isn't state this isn't a federal mandate. This is economics. State mandates, we don't need federal mandates. We've got plenty of state mandates that are going to cripple consumers. But I think this needs, there should be a lawsuit at the very least exploring that takings part of it.
I am curious what the Public Utilities Commission is going to ultimately say about this, because we know at least one of them, Chair Blank, has actually kind of broached this topic in past proceedings. I think we talked about it on the show where
Yep.
he openly asked during a commissioners meeting, can we force a gas-only utility to force its own customers off to forcibly electrify? I don't know if we have the authority to do that. He raised that question in a past proceeding, and I do think if push comes to shove and this goes further, you'll see that raised in court, not just in the PUC.
And another interesting point about that too, because you're absolutely right about Chairman Blank, that proceeding was Black Hills.
Yeah.
And Black Hills had come to an agreement with a number of the other interveners. And if you remember, it was Commissioner Plant and Commissioner Gilliam. So it was those two commissioners who disagreed with the agreement. They said no, and Chairman Blank dissented on that because he was a yes on the agreement. And that's when he was, which is unusual that the Public Utilities Commission breaks ranks like that.
Yeah.
They want that 3-0 decision. They want it unanimous.
Especially as the commission is currently constituted, where they all come from similar backgrounds and similar ideological predilections. So that I agree that is telling, and I think Chair Blank is one to watch as this goes forward, because increasingly you're seeing a little bit of discomfort as they're going further and further down the road of following what, quite frankly, the Colorado legislature is demanding of these utilities and of the commissioners.
And so the other thing I would point out too, and we talked about it, as you said, they're going from 22 to 41, and they've blown the cost cap. And the legislature has essentially abdicated its authority to the Public Utilities Commission. This isn't going to go back to the legislature for further debate.
Yep.
You get no further say in this because through your elected officials, there will be nothing more at the state capitol on this unless they do something to try and fix it. This, right now, the people who will decide the fate of your natural gas furnace will be those 3 commissioners, 2 of whom are completely uninterested in any kind of cost caps because the only thing that concerns them are emissions.
Yeah, it's a great point, because the reason that this rulemaking was initiated, Wiltour and the CDPHE, they're just citing that same 2021 bill. There's not a new bill that was suddenly passed last session that you guys didn't hear about. No, they're going back to that same 4-year-old bill and saying, yeah, it spelled out specifics up to 2030, but we think it gives us the authority to come back and go in further beyond 2030. And to your point about the costs, putting those figures you cited earlier in the show into perspective, the $1 billion one from Excel, that was for 22% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions over a 9-year period, right? The bill passed in 2021. They're citing that out to 2030. Think of what the regulators are asking, or the Energy Office is asking for here. Almost double that in a shorter amount of time, 5 years, and there's no cost cap. That phony cost cap that it's not worth the paper it's printed on anyway, doesn't exist for this subsequent regulatory proceeding. There's no 2.5% cost cap for the 2035 deadline. They've already shown they're going to blow through it for the longer period with reduced emissions. I cannot wait to see what some of the eye-popping cost estimates are going to be to fulfill this idea of 41% reduced emissions.
Actually, we may have some idea.
Yeah.
Because guess who modeled it? Independence Institute did.
That is true.
Independence modeled it. And we'll drop that in the show notes as well, just to remind you. Remember, because here's the thing. You're not just switching. You have to build out the infrastructure to switch.
Yeah.
It's not like, I'm just going to shut off the natural gas pipeline, and now I'm just going to double my electricity demand in the winter.
Right.
Because guess what? Xcel doesn't have that capacity, and neither does Black Hills. And you think Atmos is going to come to you? Because they're a natural gas utility. The power won't be there. You have to build the capacity and then build the transmission and distribution system to get it to you. That's why doubling this within another 5 years, it's actually, I think they blow that 1 billion. They blow well past that 1 billion. It'll be and it won't be, 2 billion. It's going to far exceed that. I mean, when we did it, you're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars.
Yeah, for the complete.
For the state.
And in the meantime, those costs you just cited are just to accommodate the new customers on the electric side.
Right.
But what happens in the meantime on the gas side is the folks that stay on gas, as your ratepayer funds are going to subsidize other folks leaving the gas system, is those that remain are paying for a greater share of the fixed costs of the gas grid, because those costs don't suddenly go away just because state policymakers decide that more people should be on electricity. So folks that have less of a financial means to buy a more expensive heat pump, fancy cold climate heat pump, are suddenly going to be paying more and more for the gas grid, while their wealthier peers get to go take advantage of a state rebate for a heat pump. And in the meantime, assuming this all plays out exactly how they envision and everyone transitions off of the gas system, those costs, the gas system, is just like power plants in the electric system. Xcel gets to recover those costs for decommissioning. So you suddenly have decommissioning costs that Xcel gets to cover. And guess who pays for those decommissioning costs? It's the ratepayers. So any way this goes, ratepayers come out on the losing end. It's just not a pretty picture going forward, I'm afraid.
Yeah, and Atmos too. Atmos is going to get to, they get to recover their costs.
Yeah.
They're not going to be left with sunken costs. And remember, there's no rate cap.
That's right.
There is no rate cap if they determine it to be just and reasonable. And the Public Utilities Commission is going to decide this.
Yep.
So you have two people who already don't care about the rate cap, and you have one who's actually questioning whether or not we can do it. But right now, the way I count, 2 for it, 1 possibly against. When I say we're in trouble, we're in trouble. So I'll tell you, we'll have to. I'll drop in the show notes. If we can find dates on when some of these things are due. If you want to make comments, that's the other thing.
Yeah, I believe they're opening comments through August, I want to say, for maybe I'm mixing this up, but this proceeding was just filed like 2 days ago as of our recording of this. So this will be an ongoing thing for the coming years. We'll, of course, stay on top of it as it proceeds because, as you said, I just foresee a lot of economic pain coming down the road on this.
I do too. And then we've got one real quick update.
Yeah. We want to just give you a quick...
As if that wasn't enough.
Right. As if you weren't already worried enough. Something that we warned you all was probably going to happen has started to happen. That is renewed discussions about a bill that was touted at the tail end of last legislative session, quite frankly, an insane bill, to overnight move the goalposts on the state's greenhouse gas emissions reduction goals by a full decade. This was a Polis administration goal to move it up. Under statute right now, everything has to be decarbonized by 2050. But of course, Governor Polis has been running on 100% renewables by 2040 for his entire time in statewide office. And so he wants state statute to align with that. It drew a ton of backlash because it was dropped late. All the utilities freaked out because they said, how can you do this without giving us time to discuss this? It's going to cost too much. So they said, fine, we'll pull it. Well, they're starting to renew the discussions on those bills. They're having my least favorite word in Colorado lawmaking, stakeholder sessions to get the stakeholders' opinions on this bill. So it is kicking back up again, and I would expect to see it soon.
Yeah, I would too. And this is we got word that there was a Zoom call. Clearly, we weren't invited, and we've already modeled this.
Yeah,
we are the only ones that have modeled this. The Independence Institute modeled 100% wind, solar, batteries, plus, quote, beneficial electrification by 2040. How much will Jared Polis's ego on energy, his energy ego, how much will it cost ratepayers? And I think the final total, remember, this was 2023, this was before data centers.
Right.
$695 billion with a B, $695 billion is what it's going to cost. You're looking at $1,000 a month utility bills.
Yeah. And not only that, quite frankly, the Polis administration sort of modeled this, right? The Colorado Energy Office report, they didn't do all the modeling. They didn't incorporate heat pumps. They didn't do transmission. But they still found that this scenario is the most expensive way to power the grid. So they can't plead ignorance. Even if they want to ignore our research on this, they can't plead ignorance because their own administration has found this is going to be
the single most
expensive.
Expensive way to decarbonize. And so when Polis says coal is the most expensive, is the most expensive way to power a grid. I don't know if he's a smart man.
Yeah.
So he's just gaslighting you.
Yeah.
So that's probably the only gas that we're going to be able to have is Polish gaslighting.
Yeah, where's the clean heat plan for the gaslighting?
Yeah. Can we please get an honest heat plan for the gaslighting? Oh my gosh! If we want to stop emissions anywhere, please let it be what is being spewed from the executive branch of the state of Colorado.
Yeah, amen to that. But of course, this, just like the Clean Heat Plan, this bill that's being discussed, we will absolutely be staying on top of, because I think it's going to be a bombshell when it drops. I would expect it in the very next legislative session, probably early this time, so they can avoid all the complaints about last minute bills. But we will, of course, keep you in the loop. Amy, do you have any takeaways for our listeners on either of these topics?
Yeah, I do. Get a loan for your heat pump. You're going to, or at least get it set up so that get a loan for your heat pump. I also and then two, I think there's a potential for a lawsuit here. I think it's worth exploring. But three, you're going to need more than one generator because we're going to a winter peaking system.
Yeah.
And you're going to need to stay warm. And we clearly don't have the capacity. Or the other thing is, you may not be able to afford your electric bill. So firm your own grid, invest now in a gas-fired generator of some kind so that you have heat when you need it most.
Well, that does it for us on another episode here of PowerGab. If you like what you saw, you can head over to powergab.org to check out our entire back catalog. We produce new episodes every single week. We're also available wherever you get your audio shows, whether that's Spotify or Apple. And if you'd like to reach out to us to suggest future show topics or guests you'd like to see us interview, you can send those our way at info@powergab.org. We always love hearing from you guys. But until next week, we'll see you.